Just want to let everyone know that unfortunately, as soon as I finish, I'm going to take off. I have a commitment almost in Miami, 7:30. So, but I'm very happy to be here. And today I'm going to talk to you about what is mine to accept. So, this talk is born from the Serenity Prayer that many of you may be familiar with. It's a prayer that is recited in groups like Alcoholics Anonymous. And basically, it says, ask the Lord to grant us the serenity to accept the things that we cannot change, and the courage to change the things that we can change, and the wisdom to know one from another. Everybody familiar with this prayer? Very simple and extremely complex. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about it. But before we actually get into the gist of what we want to bring to you today, I want to review some important points that I feel that quite often us Christians and Spiritists, we have maybe a skewed understanding of these concepts, which makes it hard for us to live. One of them is the concept of duty. So we know that we have duties. This Spiritism talks about that, and I got a few references here. So, for example, we have on chapter 15 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, duty for with our parents. So we have to honor our father and our mother, which means we have to attend to them in their needs, basically regardless of whether they have been what we consider ideal parents or not, because they have given us the biggest gift, which is our lives. We are here because of them, right? So that's one duty that we have. We also have duty with our children. And so we're going to see in Spiritism, we talk a lot about the mission of the parents. And in question 208 of the Spirits book, for example, the spirits are going to say to Kardec that part of the parents' missions is to contribute to the evolution, the development of the spirit of the children, as well as provide them with education and help them in their development. And if the parents fail in their mission, they are guilty of like not fulfilling this task and this mission that is entrusted to them. We also have duties with our partners. And Emmanuel will talk a lot about that, and will mention things like respect and things like forgiveness. And if you put everything together, and I started looking at the verbs that the spirits use to define those duties that we have with the people they're the closest to us. So they will use verbs such as we are invited to assist, we invited to support, we invited to educate, we invited to comprehend, to assist. But nowhere, no matter what type of relationship we are talking about, you will find the spirits telling us that it is our duty or our mission to save anyone. And I want to pause here, let you absorb that. Nowhere it is written that it is our duty to save anyone. Another concept is the concept of charity. Now we know that without charity, there's no salvation. We know that charity is love in movement. And also, we have heard that the maximum that we should love God above all and the neighbor as ourselves. So, if we take each one of these statements, these three statements, as an equation, and we put it all together, the conclusion is that outside of self-love, there is no salvation. And why is that? Again, Without charity, there is no salvation. Charity is love in movement, but we are supposed to love God above all and our neighbors as we love ourselves. So we are the very first aim of our own charity, and it has to be this way. Our charity needs to be guided first and foremost towards ourselves. We need to be the subject of our own charitable movement so that we can nurture ourselves, and by doing so, we will be able to better assist the people that are next to us. When we think about charity and we think of Christ and charity, Christ is a figure that represents abundance. He represents connection. He represents the type of charity that we aim to be able to do one day. Is a charity that does not require thinking. Is the charity that is described in the gospel. One hand does not know what the other hand is doing. There is no consciousness. It's done automatically. It's done without thinking. It's done without wanting anything back. Our charity is the opposite of that. We live in a state of scarcity. We live in a state of disconnection. We live in a state of need. So when we are being charitable, most often we are expecting something back. Charity is not something that we do freely and with complete disinterest. We usually are gaining something from the charity that we are doing. And I'm not saying this for anyone to feel better to stop doing charity. I'm saying this because this is a state where we are in our humanity. And it's okay. We got to begin from somewhere. So if you're doing it and you feel aware that, like for some people, most of us, when we do charity, we feel good about ourselves. And that feeling is our reward, because the feeling of goodness is not natural to us. In fact, most of the time we feel the opposite. So being charitable serves us in first place. So that's kind of one example how we can think about it. And also the other concept is the concept of sacrifice. So sacrifice comes from the Latin sacer facere. Sacer is sacred and facere is to do. So it's to turn something sacred. It's to make something sacred by the intent, by the way you're doing, you're carrying that. So when we think of Christ, I wonder if Christ, our understanding, our experience of sacrifice is one where we are giving from something that we don't have. Sacrifices are costly to us. To Christ, I don't think it was. So when we say that Christ sacrificed for us, I think that Christ's experience was very different than ours. I think that Christ's experience of what we consider to be sacrifice, it was not a sacrifice. It was a natural movement of a soul that has a wealth to give, a wealth of love. So it didn't cost him in the same way that sacrifice cost us. So you may say, but how is it that sacrifice costs us? It does cost. Have you ever caught yourself saying something like this? I have done so much for you, and I can't believe you're still acting like that. I can't believe you can't see all that I have done for you. Very human feeling. Do you see Christ saying that from the top of the Christ? I can't believe you guys. I just can't believe what you're doing to me. You chose me over a thief. I gave you everything. I gave you my life, and look at you. That's not Christ. That's us. So there's a huge difference when we read in the spiritualist literature about sacrifice, which is all over the literature. Okay, we have to take it slowly, because the examples that we have come from spirits who have a wealth to give. We don't. most of the time our position is one of need. Okay, so I just want to frame this before we get into the context, and then I think it's gonna make sense for us. So who is this lecture for? For caregivers. Caregivers. Not any caregiver. Caregivers are wonderful people, and to be a caregiver is a gift. But it's for caregivers who become ill in the process of caregiving. When does that happen? It happens when we are caring, for example, for someone who has a chronic disease, for someone who has a difficult condition, like, for example, someone with bulimia or anorexia, for someone who has a relative who is addicted to alcohol or to drugs, for someone who is caring for a child who has become an adult and insists in remaining a child and not take responsibility for his or her own life. And many times those situations will drag the caregiver into unhealthy ways. And because they are prolonged situations and they are situations that one feels extremely powerless, the caregiver will become ill because the caregiver goes from being someone who is there to help to being someone who is there to save. Now, we bring in our psychic the idea that Jesus is the savior and that love saves. That is a big, big mistake. Because Jesus, who represented the unconditional and the highest form of love, did not save anyone. And we have to have that clear. Because here we are, humans, in our incredible limitations, thinking that we can save the people that we love. When Jesus, who is the reference, the governor of this planet, God's messenger to us, did not save anyone who was not ready to be saved, willing to be saved. And at every single time, he told the person, your faith, your willingness is what saves you. So it's important that we keep this because, again, we have in our minds, probably from the course of many incarnations, this idea that love saves, and then we live, many of us who care for others, the paradigm and the complex of heroes. We want to be heroes. And so a hero believes that he has enough in himself to save the other person, that love saves. And a lot of times we might build our identity and our value in this role of caregiver. So if we fail as caregivers, then we become extremely frustrated, angry, and resentful of the other. Because we believe in this paradigm that if we love enough, the person will change. If we make enough of an effort, the person will change. If we sacrifice enough, the person will change. But the person does not change. And then what appeared to be love becomes resentment, anger, and frustration. And the person, the caregiver, and a lot of times the group, the family, will little by little become more and more ill, to the point that you are dragged into that dynamics where the more frustrated you are, the more you want to do, and then suddenly your life is just about that. And you, who are a human being, who lives already naturally in this place of scarcity, becomes ill. Will become absolutely drained. So this complex is defined as a pattern of behavior where the person feels this necessity, this intense necessity to rescue, to fix, to save, and to solve the problem of somebody else. And when we are in this state, we spend most of our time connected to the other person, which means that by being deeply connected to someone else's lives and problems, we are disconnected from our own life. So for many of us, that is a defense mechanism because it's so much easier to look at the illness of somebody else than to consider our own illnesses. Because we, in this planet, chapter 3 of the gospel, we learn that this is a hospital. Each and every one of us brings moral illnesses that needs to be looked at and addressed. Each one of us have limitations, have darkness that needs to be faced. If we want to be healed courageously, these are the things that we can change and that require the courage to change, as the prayer says. So again, like I said, in this complex, there is this central belief that if we do enough, we'll be able to save the other person, fix the other person's problem. And in this position, there is really a desire a lot of times underneath, maybe not so clear to some of us, that we could be God ourselves. So I put this lecture together because I heard the Serenity Prayer when I was maybe 13, 14 years old, and my father was an inpatient. Me as as youngster with my mom, we went to the place where he was inpatient every weekend for the family meetings, so we could learn about caregiving and codependency and things like that. That was the first time in my life that I was exposed to that, and recently, again, in a different situation. And I found myself precisely in the place and in the situation that I am describing to you. So I'm speaking of my own experience. And I did get ill to the point that I became physically ill. So one day I woke up and I couldn't turn my head. Everything around my neck had become so stiff. It was like inflamed and I couldn't turn, and it was in so much pain that when I almost could not drive, because if I couldn't turn my head, I have to turn my entire body in order. That day that I experienced that level of pain and immobility on the neck, which is, being a physical therapist. So it is the body part that holds the head, the thoughts, right? So I'm like, okay, I need to take care of myself, right? So so this study is a result of me taking care of myself. I really don't know what you're going to get out of this, but it has helped me to move my head again. So I hope it will be able to help you guys some. So the belief is that you are responsible for the happiness of the person that is close to you. And when you are when you believe that, you end up assuming responsibilities. They're not yours, but are the other person's responsibilities. So I'm going to give you a couple examples here. Maybe some of you are living some of these situations, and I am not here to tell anyone what to do or not to do, because I continue to struggle on what to do or not to do each day. And some days I can do much better than others. It is very difficult, the relationship with others, because our level of need is so deep. Sometimes I realize that I'm so in need of the connection that I might yield into doing something that cognitively I know I should not be doing. Some other days I'm more nurtured and I'm able to place limits that are necessary that may be at the immediate moment seem a little hurtful. But love is also the ability to say no. Love is the ability to put limits. Love is the ability to care for myself so I can better be next to the people who are in need. And so I, 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 I'm saying those things because I don't want anyone to feel like what I'm saying, if it fits you, that you will be in any way, shape, or form judged by what I'm saying. But so I just need to give you some examples. So if you have a older child, let's say someone with 28 years old who is living still in the parents' house, not paying the bills. Once in a while, there's a credit card bill that's due or past time. Then the insurance card was not paid for, and then mom, wanting to help that kid, goes ahead and pays that credit card, and then dad, thinking that, my goodness, this kid's gonna be without insurance, and now I'm really worried what can possibly happen. Let me take care of the insurance, right? So it's natural for the parents to do that, believing that they are helping that individual. They are loving, those are loving actions towards that individual. But when the parents do this, they are doing for the kid precisely what life is trying to teach that kid, which is to use his or her free will, which is to understand that there's cause and effect, to understand that we all have responsibilities and duties that we must fulfill as we grow up and become adults. So one of the messages that we send to our kids when we take their responsibilities on our hands is to tell them that they are incapable of caring for themselves. That's what we are telling them over and over. You can't take care of yourself. I'll take care of myself. So I want to give you an example of something that I think I was successful. So my son, he had a ride to go to school every morning, and the he lost the ride. He lost the ride uh, because of a behavior that it was his responsibility, and the father of the kid said, "With this behavior, I'm not taking you anymore." So he comes to me and he says, "I don't have a way of coming home from school, and can you pay me a Uber to come home? Because sometimes when he has appointments or things like that, I send an Uber so he can get to his appointments." And I said, "No, I can't. No, I have plenty money to pay Uber for him. If I want him to Uber both ways to school, that's not an issue." But it was his responsibility. He had something in place. He messed up. Now he needs to figure out how he's going to get home. It was very difficult, very difficult. I say it and I feel it. It was very difficult. But guess what? Every single day after that, he got home. He got home. He found a way. He found the ride. Some days he got the bus halfway and then got a friend to pick him up halfway and take him the other halfway. And then he walked. So he, because he's a very smart kid and he's resourceful. But if I have taken care of that, which I felt very much moved to do so, right, I would not help him to grow and to deal with the consequences. Now, do I do this all the time? Absolutely not. I fail consistently. But I try to be charitable with myself. I also understand that I have my own needs, and some days I can do it better than other days. But I just want to give you an example. and again, this lecture has helped me significantly. So if you have someone with a chronic depression in the house, um, so let's say someone with depression who is procrastinating, who is missing deadlines, who is not responding to messages, and then the spouse who is concerned, who is loving, you start remembering the deadlines, you starting paying for the bills, you starting organize the documents, you starting to help the person to wake up because the person is not even waking up. You start to justify the spouse's behaviors to everyone, right? So at this moment, you are no longer that person's partner, but you became that person's life manager. So there is a shift in roles here. And the least, the less that the depressed person do, the more the spouse does for him or for her. And then even less he needs to do anything, right? Because there's someone taking care of everything for him and for her. So the caregiver, when the caregiver is pulled, is dragged into these dynamics, you start to feel tremendous exhaustion, tremendous frustration, a lot of times anger, and emptiness. And the cherry on the top is guilt, because you say, but that person is sick and look at me. Because we have a very limited understanding of love. We're still learning what love truly means. If we look at Jesus, the way that Jesus loved, he allowed people to, he gave people the free will to make their choices. We're going to get to that. He was also very assertive. So love does not exclude assertiveness. He put the limits whenever they were necessary, because to put limits and to be assertive is to love. So this state of things in the world of addiction is called codependency. You become a codependent to the person who is ill, and you become ill too. So it becomes a family illness. And so you go from being a healthy caregiver, someone who was there just to help, to guide, to educate, and becomes completely like a what is the word? Entangled. Thank you. I was looking for it. Entangled in that life and in that dynamic. And then instead of assisting, now you're trying to control. That situation is a constant concern in your mind. You have a difficult time saying no when you need to say no. And you start to lack respect with your own self. So when we look at the definition of codependency, it says it's a difficulty to accept the limits of one's own responsibility. It comes up when we seek to control what belongs to the free will of somebody else's choices and evolutionary process. We are struggling to try to change someone else's reality. And there are some myths in codependency. So if I say no, I believe that I'm being selfish. If I am not trying to save the loved one, I feel like I'm abandoning. And it's a myth. I mean, the fact that you're not trying to save doesn't mean you're abandoning. You still can be very present in healthy ways. And again, if you put limits, you feel like you're being hostile, when healthy limits is part of love. So those are myths. Perhaps one of the biggest and most difficult feelings that we have, if you're living this situation, has ever lived or came close to the things I'm talking about, is powerlessness. And I'm going to tell you that I recently experienced this feeling of powerlessness to the maximal extent, I think. Precisely because I realized that I was really doing everything to try to save a loved one, right? It's very complicated when the loved one is your child, is a minor, for example. I want to make that difference because when we are talking of adults, people that we expect to be fully responsible for their lives. When we are talking about a minor, things become a little bit more muddy. And as the minor grows into teenager years, then little by little, the parents also have to shift because as teenagers, they also gain little by little a little bit more of the ability to choose for themselves, right? So it can be pretty tricky. But I experienced this very, very deep level of powerlessness, which was extremely, extremely painful, but extremely rich because I always say to people, crises are golden moments in our spiritual existence. If we are able to keep that in mind, we will face a crisis understanding that in that moment, there's a wealth of possibilities and growth awaiting for us. So for me, was a moment because I'm someone who I'm a doer. I work very hard. I'm very successful at work. I have a career that's very successful. And, you know, Conscious Living is going to complete 20 years this year. I do that on the side. I speak. I have two children. I've been married for 25 years. We have two dogs and a cat. I have a lot going on in my life. So the moment that I felt like so powerless, it was such an awakening moment to understand that I I am not God. Sometimes we want to be God. I don't know if you want to be God, but sometimes consciously, but a lot of times unconsciously, we are trying to control things that we have no control over. And we all do that to some extent. If you take a quick look at how you relate to others, if you say something and someone does not hear and that is okay with you, you light after that, that's okay. But a lot of times we are full of feelings. Those feelings tell you that you are more involved than you need to be. Because especially if they're anger, resentment, and frustration. Now, in that moment, I said, I need to study to help myself, which I have been doing. Did a lot of reading. And then I said, what is in Spiritism that can help me to uh, to hold me together in this moment? So there's so much that I put together after that, but I'm going to bring some questions from the Spirit's book that you probably have read many times and have passed by them very lightly because it's not like a topic that a lot of people get too much deep into it. But it's the topic of guardian angels. Because guardian angels are caregivers. So I figure, how is it that guardian angels take care of ourselves? So let's review some of the questions that you are probably extremely familiar with from this perspective, the perspective of how the guardian angels take care of us, to see if we can learn with them something that can help us in caregiving for our loved ones. So question 123, Kardec asked the spirits, why is it that God allowed the spirits to follow the path of evil? And this is perhaps the question that spoke, the answer that spoke the most to my heart, because the spirits responded by saying that the wisdom of God, the wisdom, intelligence, maximum intelligence of God is in giving each spirit freedom of choice. I was like, holy moly. So every time that we are trying to control someone, we are being very ignorant because the wisdom of the Creator, the gist of the wisdom of the Creator is the free will that is given to each one of us so that we can make the choices learn from our choices and grow from our choices. In question 501, why the action of the spirits in our life is not more concrete, more extensive? Why aren't they a little bit more open, like, telling us a little bit more what to do or not to do? And the answer is that if we were constantly leaning on their assistance, we wouldn't progress. We need the experience. We need the experience of choosing, of getting right, and of getting wrong. So the action of our guardian angels and mentors is such that they never ever interfere in our process of choice. Then in question 491 talks about the mission of the spirit who protects us. And again, I look at the verbs. They conduct, they help, they console, they support, but nowhere there is the word save. They don't try to save us. But then Kardec says, but it's probably very difficult to see someone that we love suffering. And so in question 976, it says the vision of the spirits, the vision of the spirits seeing us suffering is not a cause of affliction for them. And the answer is no, it's not a cause of affliction, because they know that whatever suffering or difficulty that person is undergoing will have an end. They know that. So it's not a cause of anguish. They said, well, okay, fine. But what if the person who is suffering is someone that I know and is someone that I love? Wouldn't the suffering of my loved one interfere with my happiness in the spirit world? And the answer is, well, you are seeing the person suffering because the love that you have for that person keeps you guys connected and gives you the ability to follow and to see what the loved one is going on. But the spirits consider suffering from a very different perspective. They understand that that suffering and that struggle is useful, is necessary for that person's progress. Now, what brings them a little bit of affliction is when their loved ones decide to give up or don't have the resilience, don't have the stamina to continue to fight, to continue to do whatever is necessary to go forward. So that is what they become sad if they see that someone is giving up. Now, and this is a question that probably most of us know the answer. Do the guardian angel abandons the person, the spirit, if the person incarnated does not listen to their advices, right? And the answer is it will move away. It will give that person space. If the guardian angel realizes that whatever devices he's giving are not serving for anything, that the will of the protege is stronger. The will to submit himself or herself to the influence of other spirits is stronger than the will to open and to listen to his advices. But it will never abandon the person completely. But it does move away. It says, you don't want to listen, you're choosing to listen to something else, then that's okay. It moves away. Now, the moment that that person calls for help, the guardian angel returns. But now returns in different terms. The person is ready to be assisted. Now, Kardec goes further and asks, but couldn't the guardian angel fight against the bad spirits who are influencing the other one? And the answer is yes, he could, but he won't, because this experience will allow the person to come out of it stronger and perfected. It is the responsibility of the guardian angel if he is unable to achieve good results. No, because he did his part. And this is what I try to tell myself every day.
We can understand why the angels, because if they fix our problem, we keep in, let's say, bad sympathy, but everything is working well, so we keep going in the wrong side.
Yes, absolutely. But everything that I'm saying here is easier said than done. Easier said than done, right? We know everything. We could possibly write books about it. But when you are home, when you are close to the people that you love, when you're seeing them hurting themselves, when you're seeing them choosing poorly for themselves, that hero, that God that lives within you is perturbed, is anxious, and we want so much, so much. I'll speak for myself, maybe you guys don't, but I want so much to be able to rescue my loved one. So there are a few, so I thought that, when I read these questions again, it helped me a lot. It helped me a lot. And it's amazing because I had read these questions so many times. And to be very, very, very honest with you, I would say that every time I studied this part of the Spirit's book, I was like, oh, okay, all right, that's fine. Now suddenly became like, I think there's a manual here for all of us. A really important manual that we need to study. But there are some other pillars in Spiritism that can help us with these situations. So, for example, the law of cause and effect. Jesus is going to talk a lot in many different figures, in many different ways, in many different passages. He will provide us with images of very difficult situations that are there to illustrate the suffering that we are going to naturally undergo if we make bad choices for ourselves. So you say things like, okay, you have to reconcile with your enemy while you are on the way, because if not, you're going to have to face the judge and you're going to be put in prison. And what is all that if not the consequences that are going to naturally happen in our lives as a result of the poor choices that we are making, right? So this is something to remember, that God is truly in control of everything. So it really helps when we are living these situations if we zoom out of the situation that we're living in, right, in that moment, and try to connect with God with the understanding that there is a force that is in control of, like, things are not out of control. They may feel out of control, but there is an organized movement in the universe, organized force. There is infinite love that is conducting all of us. And as parents or children or spouses, our mission is to serve the people who are next to us, not to save them. It is to, as parents, is to be sowers. We are sowing the seeds, but we cannot force the seed to bloom because the land does not belong to us. So a lot of times it will take the hardships of life. It will take the pain. It will take the tears to transform that rocky terrain in something that is truly rich where the seed that one day you launch on that land will bloom, will flourish, because the seed is the seed of love, the seed is the seed of truth, and love and truth never ever get lost. You may not see the results so immediately as you wish, but it will flourish one day. So what is it that we can do? What we can do, we can take care of ourselves. What we can do is we can understand that we don't have control over a life that is outside of ourselves. What we can do is we can stay emotionally in our prayers sometimes. Sometimes we cannot stay physically, but we can stay mentally praying. Sometimes we cannot stay physically, but we can keep the doors of our hearts open and never ever close. So there is a lot that we can do. And so it's amazing when we study this, because it helps. This understanding helps us lift us from that place of powerlessness and darkness to regain power and control over the things that we can control. We can control our own reactions. We can control our own life. We can control our own choices. We can look at our own illnesses, our own vices, at the own ways in which we continue to be rebellious and difficult. We can nurture our soul, and by doing that, we become much better caregivers with much more to offer to the people who are next to us. I want to have 6 minutes, and I want to bring two final points to you. One is, there is a time where people are going to decide that they want to change, whether we're talking about somebody else or ourselves. We like to say that pain will do that. Not necessarily, not always is pain alone. So there's, for example, a spirit in heaven and hell that he murders a priest. And in that life, he has absolutely no regrets. He's taken to prison, and he dies as the punishment. In no moment he had any regrets. When he wakes up in the spiritual realm, he immediately becomes aware. He gains consciousness of what he has done to himself. The spirits commenting this communication, they say that what helped that spirit was that moment of awareness. There was no suffering. There was no suffering in that. It was an immediate moment of awareness. So he didn't suffer per se. It wasn't the suffering. It was the awareness that opened in him the willingness to change, to repent, and to do differently. So it's gonna take, for whoever is struggling, or if we are struggling, a moment where, with suffering or without suffering, we make a decision that we want something different from ourselves. And that is the moment where salvation is going to begin. Not from outside, but from within. Always from within. The other thing that I want to highlight in closing is that if we look at, again, if we look at Jesus, there are so many passages we could bring, but I want to bring the rich guy that approaches Jesus and tells him that has studied everything, he knows everything, he wants to follow him, right? Follow Jesus. And Jesus tells him, okay, you give away everything that you have, and you come with me. And he stops and he thinks about it, and he said, well, maybe not now. And he turns his back and walk away. The story continues that there's the games on that day, and he goes to the games and he has an accident and he dies. When he said to Jesus, "No, I cannot do this," did Jesus say to him, "Why not? Let's have a talk"? No. When he walked away, there's any of the apostles that say, any of the Bibles that says that Jesus ran after the guy? No. Jesus knew what was going to happen. He knew that he was going to die, and yet he stood watching him with love. That's what Jesus did. And so he's for us, right? So when we repeat this prayer, if you do it, if you ever want to say it, right? Dear Lord, give me the serenity to accept, the humility to accept the things that I cannot change, understanding that you are watching, understanding that your law of love is taking care of my loved one. So give me the serenity, the tranquility that comes from faith, from knowing, to accept, to let go of the things that I cannot change. But give me the courage to change the things that I can change. Give me the courage to ask myself each day, what are my needs? Give me the courage to put limits. There are healthy limits. There are loving limits. Give me the wisdom to know one from the other, because it takes a lot of practice. And I would say, and give me the ability to forgive myself over and over and over, and as many times as necessary for my humanity. And so be it. I wish you all a great evening. I apologize for leaving, but I don't know, just like this prayer touched my heart. So it's kind of, I want to leave and I want to stay at the same time, just kind of close my eyes and let it, you know, but let's you keep me in your prayers, and we'll keep praying for one another. Thank you for listening. This lecture is available in Portuguese if anyone wants. It's I did it recently at Conscious Living, so it is in our YouTube channel, which is CLSG Videos. CLSG Videos is the initials of I got a lot of feedback from people who shared that was very helpful, because it's a theme that it's so close to home for so many people. So feel free to access if you want to listen in Portuguese or share with someone who does not speak English.